Hello, in this quick video I want to explain why the economic shutdown of 2020 represents one of the biggest opportunities for humanity as a species and for you as an individual. I call it the two box stories because there's two boxes. And we started with the first, which is the big box of revolution. And this is really the evolution of humanity over the ages. So we started with a cognitive revolution, and this is pretty much humanity's first step into the maturing process. It's when we started to stand up. It's when we created language and writing and ways of communicating with each other. And the next step in our evolution was what we call Society 1.0, kicked off by the agricultural revolution. And that's basically where we learned how to feed a workforce. During that time, we created things like the Declaration of Human Rights. We created democracy and all kinds of isms like socialism and communism. And we then moved on to the next phase of our development, which was Society 2.0, which was kicked off by the Industrial Revolution. And during that process, we created things like an education system, a legal system, a banking system, a medical system. So all these systems that supported the Industrial Revolution. We also achieved huge international cooperation. So think of the United Nations and the International Space Station. We created immense culture, beautiful art, impressive music, cathedrals, huge developments in the cultural space. We created transport, of course, ships that sailed all over the oceans, railways, the motor vehicle, aeroplanes. We put a man on the moon, that's a moonshot. And as we're recognizing now, what's needed next is an earth shot, but I'll get to that later in the video. We accomplished all kinds of physical feats. So we broke the 4-minute mile barrier, we created the Olympic Games, we conquered Mount Everest, for example. And then along came computing and the internet. So this is Society 3.0. And we've now, as you can see, developed into a teenage. So all through the ages here, we've gone through the equivalent of a human growing up. So we're now in the teenage years, and this is Society 3.0. Now, the interesting thing about Society 3.0 is that we're currently talking about the fourth industrial revolution. Now, that's a key point, and I'm going to come back to it when I talk about the second box. So what are some of the other things that this box that we've put into this box during our development? Well, we created competing religions. We created war, 2 world wars and many regional wars. We created dictators like these two individuals who again killed millions. We created the Crusades, in which Christianity and Islam were at full-out war with each other. We created the African slave trade. We created immense famine. And all through the development of this box, we've had resistance movements. And that's because the systems that represent this box, it was impossible for them to appeal to everybody, to please everybody. And so there have been various resistance movements. Okay, so at this point, let's introduce the idea of the second box, which is the beautiful box of transformation. And what this box represents is underutilized human capital. So if you think about all of the people who are currently migrating, people in Africa, people in many other countries living in poverty. So that's the underutilized human capital. And then there's some great ideas like regenerative agriculture. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but there are all kinds of ways of producing food to feed that workforce that I've just referred to, which is not the same as industrial agriculture. There's an idea of local living circular economies. That's where an abundant, thriving economy is very local and it's circular so that it creates no waste. All waste is used up by the system. There's an idea of complementary currencies. Now, you're obviously familiar with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, but a complementary currency can be anything else. It can be seashells, rocks, stones. We've got an idea of Ubuntu, which is an African traditional way of living with each other and living on the land. There's a global network of eco-villages in which residents of these villages have learned how to live with the land. There's the Sarvodaya movement, which is a self-governing movement in Sri Lanka. There's the Mondragon Corporation in Spain, the world's largest cooperative. There's the idea of the commons, which essentially does away with the idea of ownership. So all of the natural resources within an area belong to the individuals who live in that area. There's an emerging concept called portable reputations, whereby my reputation is linked in some way to how I treat the planet and how I live with each other. There's an idea called bioregions, which is the lay of the land, how mountains, rivers, the sea, and the terrain form local areas. So in this particular system, we have national boundaries, we have national currencies, we have flags. In this system here, we have simply the lay of the land. And then finally, there's an idea of no-cost energy systems. These are systems that provide energy very naturally, and there's no cost to use them, but it doesn't belong in this particular box. Okay, so that was a quick whirlwind tour of our history as humanity, but this is where it gets really interesting. And what I'm about to say can be seen as heresy. So before I say what I'm about to say, I want you to be very cognizant of your own physiology, of the way you react to what I'm about to say. You can either say that I'm a complete nutcase, or you'll have tingles down your spine and you won't be able to sleep for the next few days. So either way, this is about you, not about me. So I'd like you to think about this particular box as a religion, with all of the symbols in it that are a religion. So for example, as I've mentioned, currencies, flags, borders, the International Monetary Fund, the World Economic Forum, all of those are symbols of a particular religion. And we now have an opportunity, stepping like a teenager who leaves home. We have an opportunity for those who are ready for this, and many won't be ready for it, but you may be. There's an opportunity for a teenager to leave home and to leap into this particular religion. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but it is possible. Now, if at this moment you're feeling tingles in your spine and you're feeling excited about the concept, we've only touched on the concept so far. What it means is that you are chosen right at this moment. You are an imaginal cell. Now, Nori Huddle and Elizabeth Sartouris both tell the story beautifully about how what happens when a caterpillar transforms into a butterfly. There are imaginal cells that have been lying dormant in the skin of the caterpillar, waiting for the moment of transformation. And that's what your role has been so far. You've been dormant. Maybe you haven't been particularly successful in this system here. And you've been wondering, well, what is my calling? What is my purpose in life? You're one of those imaginal cells right now. And it's your responsibility to the rest of humanity to make that leap from here to here. And the way that happens is by using the technology of religion. Now, I'm not talking about the stories that we usually associate with religion, but what is a religion? They essentially all have the same modus operandi. There's a point where you reach a moment of realization that you walk away from one particular belief system and you leap into a new system. So that's the moment of clarity. If you think in Christianity, Saul of Tarsus was on his way to Damascus, I think, and he was hit by a bright light and he fell off his horse or donkey, and he had that moment of revelation, and his entire life changed in that moment. He changed his name to represent the change of his mindset. And we have that opportunity right now to view all of the symbols in this system as merely a religion and merely the opportunity to leap into another belief system. And the belief system has the tools already in place for us to create something beautiful out of this. So, for example, one of the symbols that everybody's fussing about right now is one of these things. Firmly in that box. It's merely a belief system. Now, I want to be very clear on my role in this. I'm certainly not in any way a guru. You are the individual who's going to make this leap, and the changes for you and the changes for the people that you touch will be profound. Can I help in some way in this process? I've been through 2 deep inner transformations myself. In my early 20s, I walked away from the religion of Christianity. But what I did very carefully in that process was I documented, I journaled every single physiological shift, every mental shift, every emotion, because it's incredibly scary walking away from a belief system. And I documented that process, so I know what happens, and I can tell you what will happen to you if you choose to make the leap into a new religion. Secondly, in 2004, I had an out-of-body experience that completely rattled my world. It was on a beach in Thailand, and I've written about it previously. But again, what I did there was document exactly what happened to me physiologically, to my headspace. It's a scary process, there's no question about it. But if it's been experienced and documented and recorded before, maybe there's some way that I can help you here. But I'm not taking on any role as any kind of guru or any kind of religious leader, because the time for that is in the past. Remember that what's happening here is we're stepping into Society 4.0, where we're now adults. In the past, as children, we needed symbols. If you think about the pacifier that a baby starts out with, and then we had various religious symbols, we had sacred texts, we had all those symbols that are necessary to help us grow up. And now that we're in the adult space, we don't need those symbols anymore. We need memes and ideas and new ways of thinking. Now, this is a very, very dangerous technology that I'm sharing with you here, and I'm doing this in full authenticity and integrity. And all I ask, here's a warning for you, is that if you choose to make this step, this leap of faith, that you are clear in your purpose. This is a big, big moment for humanity. Now, one of the things that a successful religion has to do is to create value flows between different religion or beliefs, ideologies. If you don't like the word religion, then let's use the word ideology instead. So in the past, with these competing religions, there was no value flow. And so they created tension and fighting and war. So Elizabeth Sotiris explains this very well, that when a species is maturing during their early years, up until the point where they're a teenager, it is natural for that competing and competing and grabbing of resources to happen. But when a species matures and jumps into adulthood, that competition now shifts into collaboration. So this entire box represents a religion of competition. This entire box represents a religion of collaboration. And how do we create a value flow between this? Well, firstly, we need to create a value flow into this religion. And one of the ways of doing that, we can potentially explore many more, but one of them is to take families who want to leave a legacy, who've been very successful in this particular system, and realize that now they want to do something else. So your role could be to go and reach out to those families and to create value flow into this particular system. The value that this system creates back into this one is it shines a light on where we could be doing things in a more adult fashion. So it's not fighting the system at all. Remember that as a shift in religion, as your moment of clarity, you leaping from here to here, you stopping protesting, you stopping trying to change this system. It's impossible to change this. Things are so far gone and so far broken, and beliefs and ideologies so far entrenched that we will never change this system. That's the first step of having a moment of clarity. That's what happened with Saul on the way to Damascus. A moment of clarity, recognizing that this ideology, this religion no longer serves you, and that it's time to make the leap. And not everybody's ready to make the leap, so there's no insistence that we all do this. But if you've been called, if you feel a tingle down your spine right now, then you've been called to make this leap. I've been called to make that leap. So one of the things I'm going to do is start seeding the ideas of a new religion. And I'll be starting here on the continent of Africa for 3 reasons. The first is that Africa is the cradle of humankind. The second is that I live here. And the third is that the African continent was the continent most damaged by this religion, by this belief system. And so Africa will now show the world that by creating a new way of thinking, we will create heaven on earth on the continent of Africa. And our value flow back into this system will be to shine a light on how it can be done. This is deep and profound and powerful stuff. I'm going to be talking more about this in the future. In the meantime, my sister is fully understanding how this process works and how the shift happens when you leap from here to here. And she's willing and able to help people. So somewhere down here, there should be a place for you to leave a name and email address if you want to stay updated. And there'll be a way for you to reach out to her. But now is that moment. While this entire system is busy shutting down, there's a unique moment for us to make a leap into an entirely new religious system. Thanks for hearing me out. Peace.